Hi everybody, this is Joy Forrest with Call to Peace Ministries, and today is Q&A Saturday. So today's question is one I get an awful lot, although I'm a little bit hesitant to even approach the subject. And the question is, can my abusive partner, my abusive husband change? And so again, this is a question I get an awful lot, but over the years, I hate to say it, but I have not seen too many of these situations turn out very well. But I believe it is because people are truly perishing for a lack of knowledge. As Hosea 4:6 says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. So that if you can't treat domestic violence like any other kind of counseling situation, you must treat it differently. You have to have people who understand the dynamics of domestic abuse if you are going to have any hope for a relationship like this ever surviving. In my first marriage, I was always trying to get my my husband, to the right counselors because I thought that they would be able to help us. But what I've found out since is that joint marital counseling does not usually work. In fact, it's probably counterproductive in situations where we're talking about domestic violence. And when I say domestic violence, it doesn't always have to be physical. If you will go, and I'll again refer you to the power and control wheel, you go and you look at the dynamics on that power and control wheel, which are just, tactics that are used by the majority of abusers, and they've been identified based on research. There are patterns of intimidation, fear, intimidation. When somebody's living in fear, I would tell you, trust your gut, because that, they say, is actually one of the best indicators. If you feel afraid, then there's probably good reason for that. So your number one priority in situations like this is safety. I would recommend that you go and you look at, just do a Google search for domestic violence safety plans, because you really need to understand that this could be very, very dangerous. So let's go back. So can these relationships be salvaged? Yes, if you have the right kind of help. And so somebody who is going to be able to approach the heart issues that the abusive person has, the pride, the entitlement, according to my friend Chris Moles in his book, The Heart of a Domestic Abuse. But again, it's got to be somebody who really understands the dynamics of these situations. If you just go for counseling with a pastor, or even most counselors, I have a biblical counseling degree, and I wouldn't say that I feel equipped from the training I got in that. It was not nearly enough to be able to handle these situations. So there are people who specialize in this, and I would recommend that you find those folks. If you go into a counseling session and they're asking you that what you did to contribute to the abuse, then I think you're in the wrong place. It's never going to help. In fact, it's going to make things worse. And what I usually see is that these situations tend to go from bad to worse over time. So you really have to find somebody who is specifically trained in that. When I was at the shelter, the statistic I learned was that only 3 to 5% of abusers ever change. I think in recent years with the batterer intervention programs, those statistics have improved somewhat. If somebody goes through the group intervention, the batterer intervention programs, that can vary, though, from about 18% to 65%, according to my friend Chris Moles. And the ones who are more effective, Chris seems to think, are the ones that hold the abuser accountable by checking in with the victim and finding out, is this guy really changing? Is he really doing what he's saying? Are the stories that I'm hearing in group even true? And so that's a huge part of it. Again, but you've got somebody who knows how to address those issues specifically. And so in a lot of cases, one thing that I found, even in my first marriage, the most successful thing I ever did, and I wasn't able to do it towards the end, was to provide some accountability, to provide consequences, and separation was helpful. And so the one case that I've actually seen that was fairly successful in reconciling, and I say fairly because they still have some unhealthy patterns going on, and part of that is, I think we could have overcome that, but they left the church that we were in, and they don't have the accountability they once had. But basically, you're working with the abuser on hard issues, on accountability. There need to be consequences if you're going to see any change. And then for the victim, the survivor, you want to be working on saying no to mistreatment. I mean, God doesn't want his children to be mistreated. And so a lot of times this gets complicated with the submission issue. And if you can go back and look at a video I did earlier this week on submission and how I think that should look, even biblically, especially biblically. But if you can have someone who can walk them through that accountability process, there would be a separation usually, and at the end of a long period of time when they've made progress in their own individual counseling, then you can look at maybe bringing them back together for dates in public, and then after that you can look at maybe having him come into the home once a week for dinner. And this is what we did in the case that I was part of. So I believe that it can happen, but again, I just would highly recommend that you make sure you've got somebody who is very, very trained in domestic violence, and that you make sure that safety is your number one priority. It's nothing is impossible with our God, but what I have found is that just most of the counseling out there can be counterproductive when it comes to domestic violence. So I have more on that. Actually, years ago, I wrote a paper on how it should look. I kind of regret writing that paper. I might just take it down because I failed, or I think I need to go back and edit it because I failed to talk about more specifics on how it would look. But again, bottom line answer is yes, I believe that these situations can be redeemed, but only with the correct help. And I would say that the majority of people out there don't know how to deal with the situation, so proceed very cautiously. If you do need help, please feel free to contact us at Call to Peace Ministries. There aren't a whole lot of programs out there that can help you, but we do have some resources and some suggestions for you. So be sure to follow our Facebook page. We're Called to Peace Ministries, and our website I'm going to post below or above or somewhere. So again, that's the end of this one. Yes, God can do anything, but you have to have the right kind of help. So until next time, if you have any questions, just personal message them to us on through Facebook, or send us an email at info@calledtopeace.org. So until next time, we'll talk to you then.